Suns got an amazing performance from Booker as he dropped 40 points, 13 rebounds, and 11 assists in the Game 1 victory, while Chris Paul was absent. Center DeAndre Ayton also came up a big in Game 1 as he scored 20 points and grabbed 9 rebounds as the team took a 1-0 lead in the Western Conference Final. But how does this affect Paul and his position as leader of the team? Stay tuned to find out. Before we continue, make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell if you do not want to miss the latest sports news and events. Devin Booker FaceTimed Chris Paul after winning against the Clippers. After Booker defeated the Los Angeles Clippers in Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals, as well as dropped his first career triple-double, he celebrated this huge moment by simply calling Chris Paul, who was in the meantime lying weak in the hospital. But what exactly made Paul so ill that he was unable to play? Well, a little reminder that we are living in the pandemic era, so it may come as no surprise that he was sent to the hospital after getting the coronavirus. As of June, Paul remains in health and safety protocols. After the Suns win 120-114 against the Clippers, Booker decided to FaceTime Paul so he could celebrate with the team in the glory of the Game 1 victory, despite him not being there. When talking about this moment in an interview, Booker came out by saying that the reason he called Paul is that no matter where he is or what he is doing, he is still the team's leader. Booker also added that he knew how disappointed and frustrated Paul would be that he couldn't be there for Game 1 in the Western Conference Finals. On the other hand, Monty Williams showed some team spirit by saying that the Suns always FaceTime their players when they're unable to be on the team because they want to make sure they're part of the locker room celebration and anything else they do. And even though Paul was crushed that he couldn't be there for the amazing moment, he did remain excited and with a smile on his face, raising one finger to Booker to show him that this was only one win in the series. Although Paul was excited and all, this win wasn't really to his personal benefit. As a team leader, he is supposed to be one of the best and most focused players in the group, but this victory just showed that the Suns don't actually need him. So why Chris Paul's sudden absence doesn't doom the Suns? Even though it will not exactly be the same without their team leader, the Suns can actually dodge whoever they face in the Western Conference Finals without Paul's help. But does this mean that he is not necessarily needed for the next team's matches? And will this sudden absence affect his career? Paul's absence is a devastating blow for both the Suns and their 36-year-old leader, who has scratched and clawed his way back to the top only to possibly be denied the chance to compete for a title once again. It also shifts the spotlight of the Suns to the two of the franchise's young pillars, Devin Booker and Mikal Bridges. But don't get this twisted, Paul has been a great hand for the season, with the Phoenix having 6 players in its rotation 26 years of age or younger, and with 3 being starters including DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges, and Booker. Paul's guidance helps them understand how to play at the highest level on a consistent basis. So, because of an almost perfectly constructed roster with waves of talented young players, the Suns have been one of the best stories of the playoffs. They knocked out the defending champion Lakers in the first round and swept the Nuggets in the second. And Booker is the headliner of all this. He is not only a 2-time All-Star, but he has excelled in his playoff debut and even been the best player in numerous games against future Hall of Famers and against MVPs. Booker opened the game with 34 points and 8 assists in Game 1 and closed it out with 47 points on 22 shots in Game 6. He was just as dominant against an undermanned Nuggets team, averaging 25.3 points on 48.6% shooting, 7.8 rebounds, and 4.5 assists per game in the 4-game sweep. The series was over so fast that the only memorable moment was a brawl in the stands in Denver, where Booker asked for the information of the victorious Suns fan afterward. So there is really no reason to think that Booker can't figure it all out by himself without Chris Paul being next to him. The Phoenix Suns shocked the minutes of its 2-star guiders in the regular season, and Booker thrived as the primary option when Paul was on the bench. This trend continued in the playoffs. Booker combines flexibility and strength in his games. He also combines the off-ball game of the traditional shooting guard with the ability to create his own shot and distribute out the pick and roll like a modern point guard. There are only a few players like this in the NBA, such as Bradley Beal, who finished 1 and 2 after scoring race this season, and of course, Steph Curry. But having these two skills in the playoffs is highly important. The first reason as to why it's such a big deal to have these skills is because it creates room for other players to flourish. Booker is a rare young star who doesn't need to dominate dominate the ball to succeed. He can score just by moving and cutting, all while making every player around him better in the process. That ability has been a key part of Chris Paul's success in Phoenix, especially compared to his time in Houston, where he was frustrated by James Harden's refusal to be an off-ball threat. It put a greener strain on Paul since the defense could focus on him when he had the ball, while also focusing him to primarily be a bystander where Harden did have it. And the second reason is that there's no locking up that kind of a player. The Suns can dial up any kind of play they want for Booker. There's always a way to get him going. The result of his consistency that separates the best scorers of the playoffs with 5 30-point games already. But Booker coming out of hiding is not as worse for Paul than his absence. Despite anything, Paul has always loved playing alongside Booker. He has a co-star who can take pressure off him and allow him to run the offense, and then take over for him and run it out when he sits out. Now, with Paul out for some time, Booker will need to use his unique skills to make each play easier for some of his less heralded teammates. But what is not as good for Paul is Michael Bridges, who has been succeeding in a limited role in the playoffs. What that means is that while Bridges doesn't touch the ball as often, good things happen when he does. He's averaging 12 points per game on 44.9% shooting this postseason while being 6th in their rotation in touches. Bridges is a force multiplayer in every lineup that he's in. The Suns can run plays for Bridges without taking the ball from anyone else, and, like Booker, he can thrive running almost any kind of match. Either opponent will also put the spotlight on Bridges' elite defense since he will be the primary defender on Paul George or Mitchell. Bridges is one of the league's most versatile defenders, with the physical tools to match up with players at all 4 permanent positions. But Bridges doesn't just make those players work, he's the rare defender who can actually win his matchup in the playoffs. He averaged 16 points per game on 53.5% shooting against the Nuggets, compared to Porter's 15.3 points on 38.2% shooting. Playing with Bridges is an incredible opportunity for Booker, as it gives him the chance to become known as an elite athlete, and because he will never be like Kawhi or Kevin Durant, he needs a stopper like Bridges next to him. The same dynamic exists for most of the other great young guards in the West, from Luka to Mitchell to Murray, and there's no one like Bridges on their team. The combination of Booker and Bridges gives the Suns a next-generation version of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. The beauty for the Suns, regardless of what happens in the playoffs, is that their 2 star wings are both just 24 years old. Paul will always play a small role in their story arc, but Booker and Bridges will enter their primes together. That's a huge advantage in the player empowerment era, where stars usually can't pair up until their 3rd contracts when they're nearing 30. The injury risk or older stars, as we have seen in these playoffs, is high. Booker and Bridges have the odds in their favor, and they might just become a problem for the rest of the West for a long time. But do you think all of this will affect Paul for the next season? Will he get less acknowledgement? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next video.